Hi, I'm Miriam Cates. I'm the Member of Parliament for Penistone and Stocksbridge. There have been some really exciting developments over the last few days regarding vaccines and potential treatments for coronavirus. So if we just go back to the beginning of the year when we first learned about coronavirus, we knew very little about the disease, how it spread, how it affects people. We didn't have a cure or a vaccine for it. Of course, we knew it was a virus. We know how viruses work and how they spread. So a virus is just a tiny piece of DNA. It can't survive on its own. It works by infecting our cells, by hijacking our cells' own reproduction machinery, by making thousands and thousands of copies of itself and then bursting out of the cell, infecting more cells and potentially affecting other people as well. So the virus can be caught by droplets in the air, by transferring particles of virus from hand to hand, mouth to mouth. And that's why we put in place all these measures of social distancing in the beginning, at the peak of the virus, staying at home and making sure that we absolutely limit the opportunities of this virus to spread from one person to the other. But of course, right from the beginning of the pandemic, the government's been investing huge amounts of money and resources in looking for potential cures, potential drug treatments, and of course, vaccines. And we're starting to see some positive developments on that front. So when you get a disease or when you're vaccinated against a disease, your immune system responds in a number of ways. And I think one of the ways that we've all heard of is by producing antibodies. So we have particular white blood cells in our body called B cells. And when B cells come across a new disease, they learn how to produce an antibody. An antibody is just a protein. It has a particular shape that locks on to a particular virus and neutralizes it and helps to defeat it. But because every virus has a different shape, every antibody has to have a different shape to fit, a bit like a jigsaw or a lock and a key. So you need a new type of antibody for each new disease. So that's why the first time you catch a disease, it takes some time. And so you can become very sick before the B cells start to produce the right antibodies and hopefully you start to recover. And of course, some antibodies stay around in our bloodstream for a very long time. So if you caught chickenpox as a child, there's a very high chance that you'll never catch chickenpox again because your B cells learned how to make chickenpox antibodies. And so if you come across the chickenpox virus again, the antibodies are there, they lock onto the virus, neutralize it before you have time to become very sick. But unfortunately, with coronavirus, it doesn't look as though the antibodies last for very long in your bloodstream. And early studies suggest that perhaps those antibodies last only 2 or 3 months. So even if we had a vaccine, a coronavirus vaccine that produced a B cell response, that produced coronavirus antibodies, it may only offer protection for a few months. So of course, a vaccine that only offers protection for a few months is not all that helpful. But B cells are not the only way that our immune system responds and helps us to fight disease. We also have T cells, which are another type of white blood cells. They have a more complicated role in immunity, but they help to organise our immune response. They help to destroy cells that are infected. And they also have a kind of memory function where once they've learnt to fight a disease, once they've learned a particular shape to lock onto, then they can retain that memory. So the really good news is that the Oxford vaccine trial that was in the news yesterday has produced a vaccine that does seem to create a T cell response as well as an antibody response, which is really, really good news because potentially that could be a vaccine that gives lasting protection. Now, these are early days. It's not a complete study yet. It is a very short time that it's been going, but these are promising results. And so the government has secured 90 million doses of this vaccine should it go to the end of the trial and be shown to be safe and effective, and 100 million doses of other vaccines that are being trialled around the world. So we're not at the point yet where we do have an effective vaccine. We don't know whether that vaccine will be completely protect the whole population or whether it will just modify the disease so we can give it to the people who are most vulnerable and to protect them from becoming seriously ill. We're not at that point yet. But if we do produce something, we've got every chance here in the UK of being able to deliver that very quickly to our population. And so, of course, taking one very important step towards defeating coronavirus and returning to normal life. In terms of drug treatments, you would have seen a few weeks ago, it was announced that a UK study has shown that the drug dexamethasone is a helpful drug in treating coronavirus, can reduce the number of people becoming seriously ill and potentially dying. And yesterday, there was an announcement from the biotech firm Synergen in Southampton, who've been trialling the use of a drug called beta interferon in coronavirus patients, and that's had very encouraging results. So beta interferon is again a protein that the body produces naturally at the beginning of an infection to kind of activate, to kickstart the immune system. And so by giving beta interferon artificially to coronavirus patients through nebulizers, so through inhaling the protein, it seems to have stimulated an immune response early in patients, which has allowed their bodies to fight coronavirus more effectively. And it's a very, very early stage study. It's not been peer reviewed. It's a very small study at the moment, but it looks like potentially it's had a huge effect in reducing the number of people who become seriously ill once they contract the disease. So these are really, really exciting developments. As I said, we're not at the point yet where we can guarantee the success of any of these projects, but it's clearly an exciting time for UK science. You know, the Oxford trials all around the country, including vaccine trials within Sheffield, have really shown how exciting UK science is. And I'm so pleased that the government's continued to invest both in this country and across the world in seeing how important those trials are. But as I said, we're not at the point yet where we do have a treatment, a cure or a vaccine. So the only way at the moment to prevent this virus from peaking again is to reduce the transmission from person to person. So that means washing hands frequently. It means wearing masks in public places, particularly in closed spaces, shops, and public transport and NHS settings, and keeping our distance and maintaining the guidelines in terms of how many people we can meet. So it's really, really important to continue with that. Even if these trials are successful, we're still months away potentially from having a programme of cure or vaccine that can be rolled out across the UK. So stay alert, control the virus and save lives.